All right.
Too funny.
Fellas, hey, welcome to an episode of Shots from the Winchester. Man, this is a good way to kick off we haven't even done a shot yet, and we're already, the wheels
We're
are
already mixing it up.
Yeah.
And it's early in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, might as well.
It's all
right,
good.
well, we did.
Yeah.
Al, thank you, Al, for a good pour. We are, what are we drinking here?
Liberty.
Liberty. I like
Fitting.
It is fitting. Liberty, right out of Pennsylvania. Liberty with the, you guys know,
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
the Keystone State symbol.
Yep.
So thanks to Liberty. You didn't exactly give it to us, but we bought it. But anyway, thanks to Liberty anyway. That's your way of saying, hey, sponsorship opportunities. Yeah. All right, cheers,
Exactly.
fellas.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Cheers. Cheers, Al.
I'm not crying at your story, by the way. I'm crying because I'm a little bitch when it comes to doing
Oh, really?
shots.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just got to own it. Yeah. Well, the Navy, that's
It's
fair.
the Navy
Yeah.
thing. I know. But, I mean, he couldn't do the Navy
Yes.
or the Marine Corps. He had to go to the Air Force. So
That is a
Here we
story.
go.
Let's get into it.
Here we go.
Let's just get. I know we're here to talk about VBC and everything,
Yes.
but I want to get right into this. So, you go to the Naval Academy. You're still wearing it proudly.
Yep.
You play football there,
Correct. It's the only way I got in.
and then is it really? Did you get
Oh,
it?
yes. Yeah. That football and wrestling.
And at what
100%.
point are you like, either the Navy? Well, I know the way you're probably going to spin it. You're going to say that you opted out, or the Navy decided not to have you. At what point are you like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to the Air Force.
Yeah. To answer your question, it was basically job. I really wanted to do a little bit of background. I grew up in this area. I went to Malvern Prep. My senior year, I did an internship at a local police department in the homicide division. I really liked the teamwork atmosphere of working in that type of environment. So I carried that forward throughout my time at the Naval Academy. And when it came to make service selection, I was very proactive. I went and knocked on NCIS's door, had a great conversation with them for like 3 hours. And they said, hey, love to have you. Give us a call in 5 years when you get out. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we're all civilian. We can't bring you in. I'm like, dude, you just wasted 3 hours of my time.
Yeah.
I don't have time. So long story short, I was like, I'm a pit bull. When I want what I want, and I go after it, hard. So I started exploring other options. My dad was in the Army. Talked to him. He goes, if you go in the Army, I'll break your legs. So that was out.
It's a very 80s dad.
Yeah.
Reverend. Yeah.
Short and sweet to the point. Yeah, okay, that's out.
See, that's another conversation. That's where dadhood has gone wrong today, but we'll come back to that.
Exactly. So
Fatherhood.
Yeah. So I looked into the Air Force and I stumbled across OSI and Air Force Office of Special Investigations, just to do the transfer out of the academy in and of itself. And I went to the prep school for years. So they invested 5 years. Yeah. You got to have a pretty compelling argument in order to get the ball in the end zone. To get the cross commission. So long story short, they had our senior year. We had a meeting, and then they said, hey, anybody's interested in the inter-service transfer, come on down to they have an alumni hall. So we go down to the basketball court.
They looked at your transcripts and they're like, go ahead.
I'm getting to that. It's funny you say that because I'm getting to that. So
there's too many easy jock jokes to just do here.
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm getting that. So they basically Army and Air Force say, hey, and they basically have a weeding out process. Hey, show up at this building, and they do this a couple times. Eventually a couple people fall out, right? And then eventually got to a point, there was an 05 there, Air Force guy. He got up in front of the room after doing this 4 times, said, hey, if any of you guys have any aspirations of, and I'm looking at my competition. I'm like, damn, this is going to be tough, And then he went up to the front of the room and said, hey, if any of you guys have any aspirations of flying the Air Force, he's like, you might as well leave because it ain't fucking happening. And so that cleared out half the room. And I looked around. I'm like, all right, there's 33 of us. I was like, okay, still competitive, but I think I can do this. I put my best foot forward. Researched the top 3 communities that I wanted to do. Obviously, OSI was first. Security police was the second. Then Intel was third. I spent a lot of time on my own, going down to Andrews Air Force Base and the Pentagon, learning about those 3 communities on my own time. Yep. And I had a grueling. So 33 of us went to interview. There was a board of about 6 officers, 204s, 205s, 206s.
This is just for Air Force. 33 just.
30 trying to transfer to the Air Force, yeah.
And for context, how many people in a graduating class, ballpark, at the academy?
About 8, anywhere from 8 to 1,000, 800 to 1,000.
33 is pretty substantial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 33 of us go through this interview murder board. Again, 205s, 204s, 206s, 3 out of the 4 services representing. You're not bullshitting anybody, So I go in there and I do my thing, and I walk out and I'm like, yeah, the boat's looking pretty damn good. But lo and behold, we got notified, hey, 6 of us got chosen for the Air Force cross commission. So there was a point in time where I knew I was going to the Air Force, but I had no idea what community I was going into. Air Force, AFSC, we call it. So I'm like, oh, great. So meanwhile, all my football buddies are doing service selection. I'm out at the bar, drinking up, waiting for them. And so there was like 2.5, 3 month point that I had no idea what I was doing. And, finally got notified I was going to go Intel. It was my 3rd choice. I was like, okay.
In the Air Force?
In the Air Force,
Okay.
yeah. So I was going to go to Goodfellow for school and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, I was cool about that because I could cross over to OSI later. But I'm like, you know what? That's not you. You're a pit bull. Like, let's put your best foot forward. So I go schedule an appointment with the 05. I said, sir, I really want OSI. What can I do to get an interview? And he goes, Hunter, obviously the best thing you could do is send a letter recommendation down to the personnel center from an 06 or above. And, that's the best advice I can give you. I was like, okay, I can do that. Because on the football team, you have 2 high-ranking officers, 06s that are on the officer reps. So we had one on the offense, one on the defense. I obviously played offensive line, but the defensive officer rep was Colonel Mike Glenn, and Marine, great guy, loved him to death. All of us loved him. He was like a brother to us, and I scheduled a meeting with him, and he was keeping tabs of my cross commission thing, and he goes, Hunter, he goes, what can I do for you? I was like, hey, sir, I said, I got the nod for the cross commission. He's like, but I'm going slated in Intel, and he's like, yeah, what happened with that OSI thing? I was like, well, that's why I'm here. I was like, can you write me a letter of recommendation? He's like, yeah, sure. Come back in a couple days. So I go back a couple days. He hands me this manila folder, the old manila folder. I open it up, I read it, and I go, sir, I can't turn this in. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, in good because I'm like levitating on water, and I'm like, I'm just a humble guy. I'm like, no, I'm an ordinary dude. I put my pants on the same way everyone else does. And he was doing me a solid, and I was like, so this interchange goes back 3 or 4 times. He finally looks at me, he's like, Hunter, turn it in. And I'm like, oh, he's gonna pull a K-bar out and knife me. So I ended up turning it in, and long story short, I got notified through the Air Force colonel there that a captain from the personnel center was coming up, and he was going to interview me at the Naval Academy. And I just had my first knee operation, my first ACL. I was all doped up in Percocet, and so I was wearing, yeah, correct. Make a great first impression. Yeah. I'm wearing my jumper whites, my legs, and my big, huge, knee immobilizer. And the long story short, I go to that meeting. We were using the lieutenant colonel's office actually, and Eric Gartner's his name, and to this day, he's like one of my best friends. It's really weird. Like he went to Marple Newtown.
Oh, he's a local kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sits down and he's got his paper, and I report in.
Wait,
and all
the Air Force captain is interviewing you.
Right. That's him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right,
that's him. So I report in and everything, and he starts the interview. I got my file there, and he goes, Malvern Prep. And that's where I went to high school, and he kind of shakes his head, and I'm like, where's this going? He goes, I used to go to Marple Newtown. He's like, we used to play you guys in football. He's like, you guys used to kick our ass. Like, that's literally how I started the interview.
Sorry?
So, yeah, sorry. Okay, so he immediately put me at ease. We had a great conversation for about an hour and a half. Lieutenant Colonel was, hey, you guys done? Yep. He gives me his card and says, hey, I'll give you a call next week, let you know. He called me later at night and said, I got you in. So awesome. It's a combination of, not quitting, being a pit bull, going after what you want, and then just meeting the right person at the right time. I mean, it's a pretty good story. So yeah, so that's it in a nutshell.
What I like, one of the points I took away from there is you said, you described a lieutenant colonel Marine, and you said, I fear that if I argue with him more, he'll stab me in the neck. Yeah. And our Marine that's present, you just nodded as if that was. As if Hunter was just talking about what he had for lunch, and you're like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. That's a logical way to include a
but
conversation.
I thought whenever
Colonel Mike
actually
Lynn
got the manila envelope, that it was in crayon. I can't give them this. They're going for the Air Force.
They're not going to be able to understand this.
Yeah, the E was backwards. Scribble.
What is this?
Yeah,
it's too funny.
Kids, you give me your kid's kindergarten. He's like, "That's mine." K-bar to the neck.
Too funny.
Yeah.
Too funny.
You were just like, yeah, that's it sounds like the way a Marine would conclude a
That's
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
I win.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
So that's it. That's the story. Yeah.
And then you spent 20.
Yeah. 20 years doing, as a federal agent for Air Force OSI. No regrets whatsoever. Was blessed with 3 command opportunities, 2 in combat, 1 in garrison at Hill Air Force Base, Utah. Loved it. No regrets whatsoever. I mean, it was kind of tough initially, leaving that community. All my football buddies. I mean, obviously, the good thing is my first duty station was at Travis Air Force Base, so I used to go down to San Diego a lot and see all my buddies. But that transition was tough. I not only had to learn a new job, but I had to learn a new culture and a new community. So, but again, no regrets in the end.
One of the other things that, and this is a whole separate discussion, but I'm sort of marveled at the fact that in a Division I football program, they have somebody just for the offense and somebody just for the defense who are just advocates for job placement.
Yep.
I don't know if they have that at Penn State or Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have that same thing, but it's kind of fascinating to me
Yeah.
that they're like, we're just going to advocate just to try and help you get the job you want.
It's a good point. I mean, it's also there as a mechanism to keep us in line, because
Sure.
they're advocates for us to support us in Bancroft Hall, in the classroom, what have you. Because as you can imagine, a lot of football players aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer.
What?
So yeah.
Edit that out.
So we need some help. We need some help. So those officer reps fill that void. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
we can't just end there. We obviously got to talk about your backstory and your journey through the service as well.
Yeah. So, well, mine's not as elaborate as his, but I
You have no legs.
I have no legs. Yeah,
You-
I know.
you-
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
like
just,
you have a cool story.
He's got a cool story
Yeah,
for sure.
Wrong place.
Spoiler
wrong
alert, by the way.
time. Yeah, thanks. I could take it off and we could fill it up and then we can drink out of it if you want. But I mean,
Look at his face.
Oh, hell yes. Oh my God, yeah.
That's a good idea.
so
Can you chop that up into like some, like whatever, like, I don't know, TikTok, like a 30-second TikTok video?
I love it. That's awesome.
Can we just fast forward to the end of this interview and just do it right now? All right, we'll come back to it.
So funny.
Well, my story, I wanted to join the Army because my whole family had been in the Army. My cousin's a general in the Army. She retired as a general. My uncle was in the, Green Beret. My grandfather flew over in World War II, the Flying Fortresses. My other grandfather was a chiropractor that became a medical surgeon because he's the only guy that had medical experience as a sergeant. Then they made him, a field commissioned lieutenant to operate. And I really wanted to do that. I said, well, this is where I'm going. This is my path. This is what I'm going to do. Go in, go to MEPS, figure it out, pass everything except for color vision. And, the guy on the little bitty piece of crap computer in the 90s, he goes, well, you can't even change bedpans, son.
Because
you're
colorblind.
Because I'm colorblind. And I'm like, well, okay, great. And I'm crushed at this point.
Was that literally what he says to you?
That's what he said.
Verbatim.
Verbatim quote from fat staff NCO or sergeant as he.
I like how you corrected sergeant, not fat.
It's sergeant. Well, I mean, he was a sergeant first class, but they called him sergeant. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, you got 2 rockers underneath those. Chevron. No, you're going to be a sergeant first class, not a sergeant. Anyway, that's my bitch with the Army. And I go back with the sergeant in the vehicle. He didn't talk to me the whole way home. Gets out. I'm like, are you mad at me? And he goes, thanks for wasting my fucking time. And I'm like, cool. And I'm looking at the Air Force. I'm like, no, I'm not wearing that nasty uniform.
His bad uniform.
I look at the Navies, and they're still in dungarees at that point, and bell bottoms, and look at all I
Looking like a Cracker Jack box. Yeah.
all I thought was village people, and I'm not going to do the village people look and be on a boat. And then I look at the Marine Corps, and I'm like, that's a nice uniform. Let's go in there. And so I walk in, and I'm like, hey, got a question for you. first thing, don't fucking call me hey. I'm a staff sergeant. And I'm like, ooh. I like
Yeah.
All right. I'm like,
That's an interesting point you bring, because there's at 18 years old, the kids can go one of two ways. Like, oh, I don't want, like, that guy just yelled at me, or some other kid who's
Gravitate to it.
Ooh, I like that.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
correct me right away.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I just got back from MEPS. I just passed everything except for color vision test. And he goes, I'll be right back. He walks into the Army office.
so funny.
Give me this file on Jones. And he goes, don't waste your time. He's going to fail the color vision test. He goes, we got waivers for that. Comes back in.
Don't tell me how to do
he
my
goes-
job, Army.
He goes, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, be outside, blow stuff up, and, do that.
Change
He goes-
bedpans.
He goes, cool. Infantry. Bam. And signed that day.
Really?
And then he took me back to MEPS just to make sure that I had to pass. So I had to go through the full process again. And the doctor goes, didn't I just see you in
Yeah.
here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying for the Marine Corps. And he goes, okay, well, do you have to do? I'm like, I guess I got to do everything for the Marine Corps again. So, they duck walk and do all that stupid stuff and then go to the color vision. I don't, white,
Yeah.
green,
Yeah.
brown, I don't know.
Is it a 7? He's like, sorry, I asked you for a letter.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're like, you're definitely a Marine.
What's a color is that?
That's
I don't
for
know.
color.
It's
I never learned my colors. That's why you would be a good Marine.
So then he gives me the book, and you got the first, with the dots all around it, and he goes, 27, got it, nailed it. No, I'm good. Have no flipping clue. And he goes, yeah, you're colorblind. And I'm like, no, I could have told you that. And he goes, okay. And so then I get up, and then that's where it started. It like literally went to boot camp in San Diego, did, my SOI, then, I'm thinking I'm going to go someplace cool. And, I figured
What year
out
is
it
this?
was going to be a Marine, 95.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, this is going to be cool because now I've got, I'm a machine gunner, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great because we're going to be on trucks with the 50 cal and the Mark 19s, and everything's going to be great. I'm going to be in trucks, and I'm not going to have to carry that thing. No.
Everything an 18-year-old like dreams.
And he's a big guy.
Yeah, and there's a reason like the Marine Corps recruiting has like guys just hammering away on 50 cal, because every 18-year-old is like, that's man
That's
porn.
what I
Yeah,
want.
exactly.
That's what I want.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I go through school, and then as I'm lined up in the squad bay, and you're figuring out where you're going to go. So there's Camp Lejeune, Camp Lejeune, Camp Lejeune, Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, Camp Pendleton, Camp Pendleton, Camp Pendleton. And then I'm like 3 people away, and I'm like, all right. And then he goes, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Hawaii. And then Jones, 29 Palms. Welcome to the desert, fucker. And I'm like, where's 29 Palms? It sounds exotic. No, it's
Yeah, it
not
doesn't
exotic at all.
It sounds like it.
California.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of the Mojave Desert, 20 degrees. And I'm like, all right, well, it's sand, and maybe I won't have to walk.
The beach has
No.
sand. It's
Yeah,
it's like the beach without water.
And I'm like, well, it's not Camp Pendleton Mountains, so that might be good. And I come from Oklahoma. I'm a flatlander. I don't let that deal with mountains. Forget that. We don't climb that shit and go back down. No. So then you go to 29 Palms. But how do they bring you to 29 Palms? At night, in the dark, at 12 o'clock. Then you go to the church, and you're like, I'm in a church. Do I need to say my prayers and I'm gonna go to hell or whatever? And it's 90 degrees at 12 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm in hell. And then I wake up the next morning and I look and I'm like, it's Mars.
Oh yeah.
It's fucking Mars. And then I have to clean my room with all the sand in it and everything, and I'm like, I am in fucking hell at this point.
For
But I
those who
love
haven't been, have never been to 29 Palms, like that scene from where Luke Skywalker and he's with his aunt and uncle and living
In the
on
middle
that,
of- yeah.
on that,
Nowhere.
in that little whatever like igloo thing that lives out in Tatooine or whatever. And there's shut up, Star Wars nerds. I know I got it wrong. Whatever it is, I don't know wherever they are. That is what 29 Palms looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Minus but you have mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 29 Palms. And I'm like, great. First run that we had. I'm in shape. I just got out of school. I'm in shape. No, I'm not in desert shape. I'm falling out. I'm puking. It's like 105 degrees at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, or sorry, 5 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, this sucks.
Sucks.
But that's where it went, and I did my first tour with Second Battalion, Seventh Marines, and then I tried to do the smart boot thing of saying, I don't want to go back to Okinawa, so I cross-decked over to 17.
Wait, so did you go to Okinawa?
Yeah, I went to Okinawa.
All right, you went from 29 Palms to
29
Oki.
Palms to Oki for a UDP deployment.
Okay.
And then came back to 29 Palms, and they were like, oh, we have a sister unit, 17, that needs weapons and weapons platoon guys and, regular crunchies, regular 11s. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll try to get out of Okinawa again. I didn't really like
I'll dupe the
jungle.
government. Nobody's ever failed on that.
Yeah, that was an idiot.
That's such like a
move on
19-year-old like scheme. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll sign up for this and I'll trick them into sending me here.
Exactly.
I'll pull one over on them.
Yeah, I'll pull one over.
And I was a senior lance corporal because I couldn't get promoted to corporal because our cutting score was like 2587. And I'm like, I'm never getting promoted to corporal. It's never happening, right? I move over to 17, and then I said, oh, great. You got another 4 years in 29 Palms and another 2 deployments to Okinawa. And I'm like, son of a
No way.
So, yeah, I mean, I tried to pull the smooth boot thing. It didn't really work out too well for me. Hence, never volunteer in the Marine Corps, ever. Or do
So your
anything.
first 4-year enlistment was
my
between
first,
29
my first
Palms?
was in with my first 2.5 was with 27, and then I cross-decked over and I stayed there for an additional 4 years. But and realized that I had to re-enlist and then finish out my contract with 17. So I go there, do my thing. Then I go to Security Forces School in Chesapeake, Virginia, which was great.
Yeah.
In SGA, Northwest Chesapeake. Drive across country, do that whole fun stuff, and deal with. I became a CQB instructor trainer to a cadre instructor and a physical security and all of the fun stuff, right?
And for the average Joe that's listening to the podcast, security forces in the Marines means that you're going
It's
to
an
do what?
anti-terrorism security. So
Law
either you
enforcement,
do
security, protection of
kind
stuff.
of law, but basically you're protecting the Navy, right? So you're doing refuel do fuels on nuclear submarines and things of that day, whether Bangor, Washington, or you're doing the anti-terrorism, quick reaction force like for the USS Cole. So 1F2 went there, 1F3, one of the.
So anything that's like a
first
security related,
anything security and
some excitement,
anti-terrorism.
some boredom, a little bit of both,
Mostly
lots of travel.
boredom, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of hey, go on a boat, go on an airplane, travel the world on Uncle Sam's dime. It was great.
Training's good too.
Yes,
The training was great
Yeah,
because
training's awesome.
we got the reconnaissance style training. We operated with the SEALs. We did fun stuff, right? We had the money, and the only unit in the Marine Corps that had money at the time. And then the monitor comes up and he goes, "Here you go, Jones." And I'm like, "What's this?" And he goes, "Freeze your ass off, sweat your ass off." And I'm like, "I'll take sweat my ass off." And he goes, "Great, Bahrain. You leave in 20 days." And
I'm
I'm
away
like,
from the desert, huh?
"No, I could not." And I said, "Wait, but what time out? What was freeze your ass off?" And he goes, "Oh, Keflavik, Iceland." And I'm like, "Son of a!" And that's
Yeah, can I go backwards? Yeah.
that's whenever Maxim magazine came out in 2000, saying, "Oh, the most beautiful women in the world are in
Correct.
Iceland."
Yeah. My roommate did a tour there. He loved it.
See?
Yeah.
And
Loved
I
it.
was
Way to
like-
stick the knife in and turn it there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody who gets there is handed gold bars. for
Correct.
sure. Yeah, it's really
Exactly,
good.
yeah.
Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
sure Bahrain is nice. Well,
Yeah, it was super nice, right? So I get there, desert, sweat my ass off again, dealing with the Navy, being, a cadre instructor there, and then working with the fast units and, MSG and everything, and training and doing all of that fun stuff. Did the first initial setting up of the invasion force and everything going for Iraq and '03 and, doing all that fun stuff. And then, here comes monitor time again, and they said, "Okay, you're here to re-enlist." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm re-enlisting." And he goes, "Okay, great. Well, what's your choices?" First 3 choices: not in the desert, not in the desert, not in the desert. That's what I said. I want to go boats. Let me go the boat crew. Let me do, go to Lejeune. Never been to Lejeune. Let me experience the East Coast Marine Corps. And then what did he say? He goes, well,
Is this just the end of your first 4 years?
Now I'm signing up year 8, and now I'm going for my next
Year,
my
like 8
third
to 12.
enlistment. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
third, yeah.
So I'm going for my third enlistment. He goes, well,
Third one's got to be a charm at this point.
no.
Yeah.
He goes, well, you already had your break, and I'm like, my break hasn't been in the desert.
In Bahrain, yeah.
Bahrain. He goes, well, here you go, son. And he goes, and it says 29 palms. I'm like, I just came from there.
Again?
He goes, sorry, they're the next unit deploying to Iraq. So you need to, work up, and you've had so much desert experience. We need the desert experience to go back to the desert. And I'm like,
Punished for superior performance.
Exactly.
That is such a military thing right there.
Yes,
yeah.
100%. Yes.
Can I get some diversity to my experience? No.
No.
As a matter of fact, you're the one
You've
with the
excelled
most
so
desert-
much, you're going to go to the suckiest place on earth.
But I didn't
Yeah.
want to excel in the desert.
You're going to the desert's asshole. And I'm like, great. Well, let's go to the devil's asshole of America.
So true.
29 palms. And so then I get there, and
For any
So
any
true.
tourism-based industry that might be in 29 Palms, they don't call it
There
the
is
desert's
no-
asshole. They don't. I just want to be clear. So I feel like we owe it to any resort that might be out there. The desert's asshole is not a. It's a colloquialism.
It's pretty.
not,
It's pretty accurate.
it's a very
It is pretty accurate.
It's very accurate. I mean, we could call it the devil's belly button or armpit
I don't. Yeah.
or whatever, but I think
I don't think anyone's bringing in any more tourism. But anyway.
because Lake Bandini is the asshole of that's where you do your PFT around the poo farm of the water treatment facility.
Really?
Yeah, that's where we do our PFT. So it smells like shit. So it's the devil's asshole.
Oh man.
And
But
just-
I just-
It's so great. And Lake
Fantastic.
Water, they think burn pits is a thing. No, it's you're inhaling
Biological, yeah.
all day long
in country before you get overseas.
at 120 degrees. Think of this.
Yeah, there's not a Marine recruiter who's ever going to allow a recruit to listen to this podcast.
Never, ever.
All right, so there we are.
They're gonna laugh.
What I do have to ask, so when you are given options and you're up to re-enlist, do you know where you're going first,
No,
or they make you wait?
No,
make you
wait
make
until
you
you
sign
get
up.
get your wish list.
Get your commitment first.
Give me your wish list of where you want to go,
Yeah.
and then it's the needs of the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wherever the need is, that's where you're going. Well, the need was the desert. Great. So I had to go back. So I check into regiment, and I go
Back
talk
at
to
29
this-
Palms.
Back at 29 Palms, and I, asked the guy. I'm like, well, where do you want me to go? And he goes, well, look at the board. Where do you want to go? And I'm like, 2-7. Hell no, not going back to there. 3-4. Not going to be a part of those bastards that gave up in Okinawa.
And for the average Joe listening, so 2, 7, 3, 4.
So-
These are units, and why would you say yes or no? What do they
Infantry
mean?
units. Infantry units. So
But what do you
first
know about
battalion-
them that when you see the 2, 7 or the 3, 4, what do you know that makes you say yes or no? You just know.
Well,
like that-
because I know the history of the
Okay.
of the unit in the Marine Corps. So there's in 29 Palms, it's 7th Marines.
Okay.
So you have 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, and then 3-4, which is the bastards. And they're technically their colors had to stay in Okinawa, Japan, because they gave up their colors during World War II. Because they were under an army unit, and the army unit surrendered, so the Marines had to surrender. So the Marine Corps punished them and said, your colors could never be on American soil. So you have to stay in Okinawa, Japan. So each one of the units, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, had to split up in the United States, but the headquarters had to stay in Okinawa. So it's pretty,
Wow,
it's
the Marine Corps never forgets, huh?
no, we don't. So I look at all of the units, and I'm like, well, I'll just go back to 1-7. I said, okay, great. So I go check in, and I see familiar names on the boards, and I said, oh, well, this is going to be interesting because my old company gunny is now my sergeant major. He wasn't in whenever I checked into my office, so I checked into the S3, and they said, oh, well, sergeant major's not here. He's in Camp Pendleton picking up some more sacks to come to 29
break.
Palms. And I'm like, all right, great. So I come back the next day. Sergeant Major, we called him the Gator, Gary Weiser, Sergeant Major Gary Weiser. His eyebrows would come out of the door prior to him coming out the door. And I mean, they were huge. They were
Like a
big
cartoon
little-
character?
Yeah,
You're like,
pretty much.
dude, take a lawnmower to those things, bro.
Yeah, pretty much. But he would bitch at you if your mustache was out of regs. But his eyebrows were totally out of regs all the day long. And
We're gonna have to research that to see if there's an actual reg on eyebrow
there is
trimming.
there is
Is there really?
eyebrows,
Like
ear
Andy Reid
hair,
would totally be out of.
ear hair, nose hair, neck hair.
Can't be out.
So anyway, check in with him. He goes, "I'll go back to Suicide Charlie," and I said, "Okay, great." He goes, "You'll see some familiar faces." I'm like, "Okay." So I check into Suicide Charlie, and Christopher D'Antoni was my old lieutenant in Suicide. Now he's my captain. So it was kind of like going home. I mean, it kind of like I never left. Deja vu happened, and then did our workup, went to Iraq, and did our combat deployment. And on my last 60 days, I ended up hitting a double stack anti-tank mine over my Humvee, taking all of my company gear from Al Qaim, Iraq to ASP Wolf to take over for some reserve unit that never went out of the wire.
Let me, if I can, let me just, in all seriousness, let me dissect that for like the average civilian that's listening. You were in a regular Humvee, and you were transporting
All of my company's assets
from
the whole company.
one part of Iraq to another part of Iraq, and you guys were in a convoy, and you ran over what?
A double stack anti-tank mine. So it's two mines stacked on top of each other, and one mine gets set like
Twice
this.
the fun, huh?
So as the first vehicle goes over,
Pressure
and then
plate,
second,
yeah.
and third, and then by the time the whatever vehicle hits the pressure plate, then both explode and becomes a big problem. And so as I'm going through this, we left at 9 a.m. in the morning on January 3rd of 2005. By I would say about 9:45, 10 o'clock, I hit the double stack, launched 25 feet in the air, and landed behind the Humvee.
You launched, or the
I did.
vehicle launched.
No, I did. So because we were in a thin skin, so thin roof and everything. If I would have been in an up armored, like Donald Rumsfeld said in 2004, that every vehicle that rolls out of the wire is an up armor, we laughed and we said, well, he needs to come to where we are because our vehicles have been blown up constantly, daily, and we were having to go to the graveyard to retrofit our Humvees so we
So
could
when you did
continue
thin
the
skin, was
mission.
it just a canvas top?
Yeah, canvas top.
And and this is all serious. The blast actually
Pushed
from underneath pushed you out of your seat, blew you through the canvas, ripped right through the canvas, 25 feet.
Yep, and my gunner went up as well. So we're passing each other.
It's not
I
funny, but
didn't
it
see
is.
it. I know. It's kind of like, something out of a cartoon. He lands in my seat, and I land behind the Humvee.
He
on the
actually
ground.
landed in your seat.
He landed in my seat. Like, landed there, and he's thinking, and he wakes
You're right.
up.
That is like an 80s sitcom. Like if somebody's writing a cartoon, that's what they would write.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. And he goes, holy shit, Staff Sergeant got vaporized. He's not here. And then Morrow, which was Wickham hit, and he was like, holy shit, Staff Sergeant got vaporized. Where is Staff Sergeant? And then
That's meaning you.
me.
Yeah.
And then Morrow was like, I don't know. And I woke up and, my flak jacket's off, my glasses are off, my helmet's off, I don't know where my rifle is. And all I have is my holster for my pistol. And my pistol is still secured. And I was like, holy crap. So I'm checking everything, and I check my boys to make sure they're still there. That's a priority.
Priorities, yeah.
Priorities.
First thing.
And then I checked my legs, and I'm like, I feel okay. I'm all right. And the pain didn't hit me. And then I roll over, and I try to stand up, and that's whenever it felt like Mama Cass is in a steamroller rolling over my legs
Really?
at that point. And I was like, shit, I'm done. And I told the guys to stay in the vehicle. They didn't listen. They came to my aid. And then Doc ran over and stepped on another landmine. He didn't get, he's, a little Navy corpsman couldn't depress the plate, which is good. And he
I like
ran over
even
one.
in the aftermath, you still take an opportunity to take a dig at your Navy guys, which is well deserved.
It's good to be 110 pounds soaking wet.
He was lighting up, and he actually couldn't depress
He
the plate.
couldn't depress the plate. So I mean, as he's running to my aid, he runs over. The Humvee slides, and it goes up against another pressure plate and unearthed another double stack. So it was basically
It didn't explode it. It just unearthed it.
Daisy
just
chain.
unearthed.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be that it hit one
Yeah.
for the Dragon wagons, the fuel trucks. It was supposed to hit one, move forward, hit it again, hit it again. So they were trying to be super tactical.
The bad guys were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were trying to, but they were idiots, so it was okay. So that's how it kind of rolled in that direction, and then my story from there just went and compounded to all sorts of other fun things after that. So it took me 2 years to recuperate, and I tried to stay in, tried to be a gunner, warrant officer for the infantry, and then it was so that for the listeners, a Marine gunner is the tactical genius of the battalion. So he does all of the training. He does all of the, tactics and teaching tactics to the infantry guys and leaders, and advise the battalion commander or regimental commander or division commander of tactics on what to do in combat. So that's what I wanted to become, and that's where my whole time frame I made sure that that's exactly what I wanted, because I had 3 gunners in the Marine Corps that were very influential for me, what I wanted to be: Gunner Lowry, Gunner Galingus, and Gunner Wright. And they were the top 3 gunners in the Marine Corps, and they were all stationed 29 palms. Why? Because you can blow anything up there, you can do anything in 29 palms, because the only
It's
thing
the
you have to
asshole.
worry about
Exactly.
is
No
a
one cares
desert
what happens to
turtle.
the asshole.
That's the only thing you have to worry about is a desert turtle. And don't kill a desert turtle, because it's $25,000 and a fine and jail and everything else,
Got it.
because it's protected.
Yeah.
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 But otherwise, it's just.
But otherwise,
Free game. It's free game.
It's a free for all, right? So that's what I wanted to do, and I tried to stay in, and it wasn't working for me. And well, obviously, after I did my McCruss hike and I did my PFT, got a 300, I shot my rifle, expert, got my pistol quals, expert, did a machine gun.
You're saying this is after you lost your legs.
After I lost my legs,
Yeah.
I was trying to stay in.
You established through testing, if you will, assessments that, hey, I can still do the job.
Still do it.
Yeah, I could still do it until I got to the hike, which was full battle rattle with your pack, so you're weighing another, 220 pounds, with full, plates and ammo, water, chow, and all your gear
Yeah.
to do a 26-mile hike. So I made it 15 miles. I took off my leg, and I was just dumping out the sweat. Well, it didn't work. I was dumping out blood at that point. So I was so the corpsman, he's like, "Yep, you're done." I said, "Well, you got some super glue?"
Yeah.
I mean, let me get to.
Let me
this
finish
point.
this pig.
Let me finish this. I mean, I'm at 15. What's another?
Yeah.
A couple miles.
I'm in the home stretch here.
And so he goes, "No, you're done." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, and I was hurting by the time
Yeah.
that was done. So that's whenever I figured out it. Yeah, send my letter. Don't promote. Called the school. Not coming. Can't do it. Can't be there. And that was that hard transition to move out of there. And then I got roped into the nonprofit world from there on. I worked for General Peter Pace at Wall Street Warfighters. Went there, and then went to the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation to provide scholarships to every single child of the Marine and Navy corpsmen that served with the Marines. And then I went to workshops for warriors, training and part of the Skills Bridge program into advanced manufacturing, from welding and machining and 3D printing and robotics and everything, to the suicide prevention side of the house and study from America's Warrior Partnership. And then I'm setting in Dallas, Texas, and I get a call from this guy, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in between jobs right now, and I'm just, kind of taking a little break from the nonprofit space." And he goes, "Well, I've got something for you." And I was
John
like,
gives me the look.
"Okay." Yeah, he gives me the look, and he ropes me in. But
So that brings us up to
VBC Giving Foundation.
VBC Giving. Yeah.
We had met when you were working for a workshop for warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 20, I think it was 2016,
16.
something like that. I had there was an event. So one of my Naval Academy classmates told me about this event up in New York, and at the time I was working for a small startup, and I was trying to grow the business as kind of like the chief strategy officer. And so I felt, after talking to my classmate, that this event would be a good venue to, get some potential investors. So I went up there, and so when I deployed to Afghanistan for a year, I had the Air National Guard group out of Long Island. They were my Air Force cops that were chopped to me tactically to provide security, because we went outside the wire every day. That was our job in OSI, like serving up targets in the silver platter to SEAL teams or direct action teams or what have you. That's the only capability I didn't have, was a direct action team, but we had everything else. So the cops were out of the Air National Guard group in Long Island were chopped to me as their security guys to get us to and from with all the heavies and the labs and all that stuff. But so those guys were up there. I invited them to this event, and a couple of them showed up in their uniforms, and I knew right away once I found out he was a Marine. I was like, oh my God, it was a mess night. So it was like no holds barred. I'm like, oh my God, my guys are gonna get crucified. And sure enough, John's digging into my guys, and one of them got him back pretty good. But nonetheless, it was a great night, and I kind of walked away with a firm appreciation of what he does. Talk about working a room. I was very impressed with how the charisma that he has. So that was, when VBC Foundation was looking for our first executive director, because in the nonprofit space, crawl, walk, run, right?
Sure.
He popped right in my mind, and that's when I called him and said, hey, I got an opportunity for you. So take it from there.
So I mean, we talked for a good month or two just to figure out how it what it was going to look like. VBC Giving Foundation is a foundation that provides safe, affordable housing to veterans, to children aging out of foster care, seniors, and abuse survivors, so the single female head of households. We believe that there is a innate need in America to provide safe and affordable housing for veterans. We're starting with veterans first because, the amount of people that join the service is only 1% of the American population. Right. And what we need to provide to them on the backside of it is safe, affordable housing. And that is across the board, because the average housing cost is upwards of $300,000. The average family income of a veteran is $64,000. So you can do the math right there and know that they're house poor. Yeah. So we need to, and with rent and everything of that nature, there's nothing that's there. And then be able to provide the community, sense of community, and the services to get them to being able to get a better job, to getting their VA benefits package from 60% to 100%, to getting their VA educational benefits, because navigating the VA is such a hard piece. I mean, this is as well as anybody, is filling out the paperwork if you don't know, and then you have to wait 6-7 months just to get your appointments. And then by that time, if you have a traumatic brain injury, or you've had PTSD, or you have TBI, or whatever it is that's hindering your thought process, you'll skip and miss, and then you forget, and then it's just a compounding piece. So what we do is we're revitalizing the dream of everybody has a place to call home.
There was something on your website that caught me, and it talked, and I forget, it was like a Teddy Roosevelt quote or something that said, it's very hard to have an identity, it's very hard to have anything else stable in your life if you don't have a place to call home. And I'm paraphrasing whatever that quote is, and that kind of caught me off guard, because if you live in a home, you kind of take that for granted if you have a stable home, or if you have somewhere to call home. But for those who don't have a place or a community, that was an eye opener to say, wow, that is the like what was like Pavlov's, like the essentials, and like shelter and all this stuff. But if like air, food, water, but if you don't have a place to call home, like there's something missing emotionally and socially in your life.
Huge void.
That's a starting point for VBC, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it is, because if you don't have a house, you don't have an address, can you get a job? No. Where do they send stuff? Where do they know that you have a place to call home?
Yeah.
You don't. So that's where we're seeing from the VA veteran workforce and the agents there. I asked a room of 37 that deal with veterans that work for the VA on the
These are 37
VA work
VA
Veterans
employees.
Affairs employees. Okay.
Veterans Affairs employees. And I said, how many of you have a veteran that does not have a home that you're trying to get him a job? 90% of the room rose their hand. I said, okay. How many of you have a veteran that doesn't have a address? 90%, put their hands up. I said, how many of you have veterans that are housing insecure that are on the brink of losing their home because they can't find a job? 100% rose their hand. And I was like, so this is the problem. If you can't have a house and you don't have a house, how can you get a job? How can you, take your shower, get prepared for your interview and go to your interview and get the job, land the job, no matter what it is. And on the job application, what's your address? Well, I don't have an address.
Yeah.
Well, good luck getting a job. So
It's a chicken and an egg reversal thing.
It's a
right?
total-
Right? Like the
Yeah.
VA is trying to help you get a job, which is good. I mean,
Right.
that's noble and it's a worthy cause, but it's an interesting point you bring up. Like, how are you going to get a job if you don't have a
If you
home
don't have a
first?
home.
And I'm sure the veterans saying, well, how am I going to afford a home if I don't have a job?
Yep.
But that's where VBC is coming in and saying,
Right.
hey,
Yep.
we're going to help you establish that first piece. And it's interesting that you use the word home so often because it's not just a house. It's not. It can be an apartment. It can be just something, but somewhere that you call home, and your home base, right? It
Yep.
gives you like a sense of identity. It gives you some security, some safety, psychological safety, and security in your lives.
Yeah.
And it's something I think that we take for granted.
Sense of purpose.
If you've never lost that, it's something you take for granted.
Yeah,
100%.
It's and you look at how many veterans that lose their homes or lose their family unit. Everybody loses something at some point, right? And we look at, and I have to look at it from a different perspective, from the suicide issues that we're having in the United States right now. With they state 22, well, it's more than
more than
22
that.
because the VA doesn't count National Guard. They don't count the reserves. Because they don't, unless you've been activated for 180 days. There's a big number that is a huge disparity of veterans because they do the exact same thing. They're just owned by the governor of the state. They're not. They go to the exact same boot
And to
camp.
be clear, we're talking about the 22 suicides a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So they go through more. So there's more of them that are ending their life.
It's kind of a leading question, but I think I know the answer. Is there science or research that links all of the issues that we're seeing with veteran suicide, veteran mental health, veteran physical health, that it links it back to they
Housing.
also don't have a home? Yeah. Links it
Well,
back to
if
housing.
you look at some of the major polls that are going on from Mission Roll Call to, the Combined Arms Institute and everything of what they're doing, they're looking at housing, and housing is the number one issue. So, with that, and with whenever Hunter brought me over here to look at VBC Giving Foundation, that was out of everything that I've done, from getting them jobs to getting them an education for their families to getting them another job to the suicide piece, it all wraps into the one thing: housing. Housing is the number one issue of the veterans that they're facing right now.
Yeah.
And if I can alleviate the housing, and our replicable model isn't just us building the buildings, it's other nonprofit organizations being able to use our buildings and our model and replicating that across the United States. That's the key factor, and that's the key winner of getting this done. And it takes a village to build a village.
Yeah.
It takes people to give up their tangibles of their time, their treasure, to build these villages, because that's a huge piece.
Yeah.
Because it's, and I gotta tell you that we just had our first get together with the patrons that are at the village
On Sunday.
Sunday.
And I just want to, if I can interrupt, you mentioned earlier in our earlier conversation, you said we're not just building like single family homes, we're building a community.
Community.
And so when you talk about this village, I think there's a context that I think
Yeah, it's
listeners
It's
care to know.
so our
Yeah.
village is a 47,000 square feet, or no, I'm sorry, 37,000 square feet, 47 unit
yeah,
apartment with wraparound services within the community room that we have there, and we have a computer lab.
And that's,
So-
that's here in Philadelphia.
It's here in
Yep.
Philadelphia.
Is that
It's in Frankfurt.
Is that the first one? Is this
Yes,
fir-
it's the first one.
flagship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
the
it's the first one.
flagship for VBC,
Yep.
A
Giving
successful
Foundation is yep.
Yep.
effort to get a, as you said, a community built for, and is this just for veterans?
Just for veterans.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh,
Correct.
47
Veterans and their
units.
families.
47 units. Yep. Yep.
So we
One,
have-
2, 3 bedroom. Yep.
And
Condos.
studios.
Yeah. Studios and studios. Yeah.
So it's, we had that, and then I go in yesterday to, to the village in Frankfurt, and I'm talking with some of the people, and one guy, Paul, Air Force vet, pilot, successful, lost his home, went down a different path, right? Of if you can't get help from the VA, what do? You self-medicate. He self-medicated, lost his home, became homeless. He ended up finding VBC Giving Foundation, got into the apartment a week ago. He's under HUD-VASH, and 90% of all of our residents are at or below poverty level. So
With their
the
household
housing,
income.
yeah, household
Yeah,
income.
yep.
So the Housing and Urban Development and VA stipend for housing is supporting them to be able to live in this beautiful facility. He's sitting on the steps, and I said, I could notice that there was something evidently wrong, and I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "I've got to find out how I'm going to tell my family I've got stage 4 cancer." And I'm like, "You just moved in here, Paul?" He goes, "Yeah, I moved in last week. Found out today." And he starts breaking down crying. And I said, "What can I do to help? What is there? What do we need to do? We're here for you."
Yeah.
And he goes, "I've lived a happy life. I'm 6 months away from my dad's age whenever he died. I've lived a happy life. I've gone through my trials and tribulations. I've dealt with my PTSD. I've dealt with the stuff." And he goes, "This is all Gulf War syndrome that's hitting me." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'm good, but this is the most beautiful place I've ever lived.
Wow.
And it's the last place I'm ever going to live, but at least I'm with my family." And he's talking about his military family of being there with them.
Yeah.
And that right there was shocking to hear, gut-wrenching, and it gave me another sense of we're doing the right thing by housing these vets, giving them that chance of having a safe, dignified place to call home. That's the key. That sense of giving them their home, and they're in tears because it's the most beautiful place that they've ever lived.
Yeah.
And one Marine veteran in a wheelchair said that this is an oasis in Philadelphia for veterans. There's no other place like it, because we're not only housing them, but we're also giving them the supportive services that they need to be able to be successful and to be able to, and it's not a handout. We don't do a handout.
Yeah.
We're giving them a handout.
As vets, we all have that common bond and the dignified, stuff, and we're very proud of our service. And when you get a bunch of vets together like Veterans Village, I mean, there's nothing that they can't accomplish, right? If they get together and, and I'm a big, huge ownership guy, being a military officer. So, and they're going to take ownership of that Veterans Village, and they're going to make, think about a community. I firmly believe that group of veterans, once we get everyone in there, they're going to make a positive impact in that community.
Yeah.
So
It's an interesting.
there's no doubt.
They
No
will-
doubt in
They're
my
not
mind.
going to just have an impact inside the walls of that building. They're going to influence the
100%.
other parts of the
100%.
that community where they live. And
And they, and
100%. They do, yeah.
And with the half filled up that we have now, they're already making an impact in the community, because
Yep.
they're the ones out there
Set an example.
is they're cleaning up the trash in their neighborhood.
Yep.
they're going. They do. We have floor captains in there where they self chose to do this.
Yeah.
They're floor captains. They go down. They make sure their floor is good. They police their own.
Yep.
They're talking with each other. They're going
Holding
out
each
within
other
the
accountable,
community.
huh?
100%.
They are.
Yeah.
100%.
And they go out there to the community and they're cleaning up the trash and they're putting it in the trash dumpster because they're proud of this place. And we are like the diamond in the community because that's all of the veterans and all of the neighbors that we have. They didn't like that there was building a new building in their community until they found out it was veterans. And then as soon as they saw Lady Liberty on the side of our building with all service branches and knowing that all of our marketing is Veterans Village, 100% for veterans,
Yeah.
their whole mind shift changed. And they were like,
The surrounding
this
community.
is great. Yep.
They embraced it.
This is great. They embraced it
Yep.
and they love it. And our vets that are there are taking care of their own.
Yeah.
They're taking care of the building. They're taking care of the community, and they're beautifying the. And that's how it starts.
Yeah. The ripples.
It is. It's like
Ripple in the pond.
You drop a drop of water, and that ripple effect, and that's exactly what's happening. So as we're moving here, we're working Philadelphia. We're stabilizing this building, which we need funding to be able to stabilize. Because interest rates have gone up, we had to hold off for almost a year of opening the building because of supply chain issues for electrical meter mains. And, those things were, veterans weren't being housed for a year because our building wasn't open. Whenever we first opened, boom, it was going. And we're halfway right now. And people
full.
halfway full.
Yeah.
And people are asking, well, why aren't you fully full if there's such a problem? Well, there's levels of everything. So PHA has to get their information. They have to sign their lease with PHA. They have to sign their lease with us. They have to have their background check. They have to make sure that their DD-214 is correct, that they are honorably served veteran. They have to, they have to go through these things, and these things take time. Our side is super fast. It's the backside that is super long to take into consideration in getting these veterans in the housing side of the house and letting people know that this is there for them, right? Because marketing takes a lot of money to market
Sure.
everything. So it's, things like this, like, shots from Winchester that we can reach out to a community of veterans, which is amazing that Greencastle is doing this, is because you're a 100% veteran-owned firm.
It's awesome.
It ran.
Yeah, it's
So
awesome.
you're putting that out there. Thank you
Yep.
for having us, because this is important for us to get our veteran story out of what we're doing with our veterans villages, because it's going to take that veteran community to come together and say, hey, $20 will go far.
Yeah.
Because what's great about our nonprofit organization is your dollar that you give, you can see exactly where the dollar goes. You know what the dollar is doing. It's creating and it's building these buildings for veterans, for them to be able to have the wraparound services. Because if you look at a chair or a table, right? You got a house, you got food, you got your family, and you got your mental health. If you lose 3 of the legs of that table, it's not standing up. Then your mental health comes into play. So if we can provide them the housing, get them a place where they can store their food, get their family unit together and keep their family unit together and get them a job, that's the model that needs to be replicated across the United States.
So what is next? So we're getting the village up and running here in Philly. It's half full already. Looking on the strategic vision for VBC Giving. What's next in the hopper?
Well, once we stabilize this building, then we're moving to Chicago for an all-female veteran housing in
Wow.
Chicago.
What plans are already working on?
We're already working. We're already talking with the city of Chicago.
Wow. All female veteran.
All-female veteran
That's fantastic.
facility with their families, because
And that was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was based off certain statistics.
Yeah.
Correct, right, yeah.
so
We
we're
went
not
that
just-
route. Yeah.
We're not just throwing a dart at the dartboard. We're actually looking at what is the demographic that's being the least underserved,
Right.
and that's female veterans.
Female veterans.
Is the least underserved demographic in the veteran space.
The most underserved.
The most
Yep.
underserved.
Yeah, most underserved.
Correct.
Got it.
What did I say? The least
I got you.
underserved?
Yeah.
Well, man.
Same thing. It's a Marine.
It's a Marine thing.
Get the crayons out.
I gotta get crayons on. I know.
Blame it on the rookie.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame it on that. But they are underserved immensely in the city of Chicago, and 7% of the female veteran population are in Chicago.
Wait, 7% of the female
Entire-
population.
The entire female
The
veteran,
100% of the female veterans.
Yep.
7% alone.
7% live there.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So
Yeah.
the idea of VBC going there is data driven and
Yeah.
need driven.
It's need and
100%.
data driven, and and I even went to an all female conference in Chicago. I knew that, I had female counterparts. So I know that I've got, sisters that are in the service, but I didn't know what their issues were until I went. And housing, number one issue. Second issue is childcare for single mothers, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Our buildings we can put public-private partnerships in the bottom of the buildings. We can put a daycare system in the bottom of the building and work with, a Head Start or something like that to rent that space that then feeds the building
Yeah.
of funding. So therefore we can keep the reduce of costs of that building, or maybe it's, free for veterans if we have like a big Starbucks, or we have somebody that comes in that's, cranking money, and then can the veterans work for Starbucks? Yes, because Starbucks has a, veterans initiative.
That's awesome. You said it's a replicable model, so I know there's more. There's certainly more to unpack there. But in the last few minutes that we have left here, how can people help?
How people can help is by go to vbcgivingfoundation.org and click the donate button. You can click monthly. You can click, a one-time gift. But just know that 90% of every single dollar goes right directly into the buildings and into the services that we're providing for our veterans.
Yep.
So and it takes a village to build a village, and we need their help.
Forming partnerships that can provide either monetary support to us or tangible goods. What's the name of the bed company that we have in Create a Bed? This guy came in and basically did Murphy beds for us in Veterans Village, and they're awesome. I mean, I was in there, I was like, dude, I want one of these things. So those partnerships are very crucial to our success. So if anybody out there is listening to this that has an entity or company or what have you that wants to partner with us to provide things that we may need, then we're welcome to have a conversation, because again, like John says, it takes a village to make a village. So teamwork makes the dream work. So yeah.
All right, VBC Giving
Foundation.org. Yep.
All right, we'll make sure you put that on the website.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Hunter.
Awesome.
John,
Thanks for your time.
Hey,
Thanks for
John,
joining us,
thanks.
guys.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks
Yeah.
for the work you guys are doing for veterans. And I also know that on the website you guys are talking about, you said graduates of the foster care system and refugees and single moms and lots of
Seniors.
other
Yep.
seniors, people that are also suffering from homelessness
Yes.
and housing insecurity.
Yes.
So I know there's a bigger vision for VBC Giving, but it's really cool work.
We're looking for more board members as well. So if there's interest there, then we'd love to have a conversation and bring you onto the team.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.